There we go. Good evening. Hope
Hello.
you're well.
Evening.
Right, I'll mute myself again now I've said hello.
All right. I think we'll make a swift start. We've got quite a few people with us, and this is only a short briefing tonight around our 12 ideas for local manifestos. It's something that we produce every year for candidates and councillors to help them develop their local manifestos for the elections. And as you know, we have huge elections next year in 2021. In May, we have council elections, districts, Mets, counties, all across England. We have police and crime commissioners up for election in England and Wales. We have the Scottish and Welsh parliaments up, and also the London Assembly as well, and a smattering of mayors across the country as well. So really big elections, and we've put together some of the, I guess, best ideas from our movement, which you could take forward into your local manifesto setting processes. But before we start, I forgot to introduce ourselves. So my name's Emma Hoddinott. I'm the local government officer at the Co-op Party. I do recognise a lot of you here, so lovely to see you. And I'm joined by my colleague Anna Burley, who's the policy officer at the Co-op Party as well, and is the brains behind these 12 ideas. Before we go on to the 12 ideas, what we're going to do is I'm going to do a quick poll to find out which of the ideas you're most interested in. Then I'm going to hand over to Anna to talk about how you can use the 12 ideas. And then we'll kind of pick up some of those key issues as part of the briefing. We're not going to bore you. Oh, I got muted. We're not going to bore you and go through every of those 12 ideas. We're just going to highlight the ones that of particular interest. So, somebody has disabled my polling. Izzy, can you make it work? Izzy? If you're there, can you click the polls button and start the poll? Because I've been disabled for some reason.
I've done it now, Emma.
What?
Launch the poll.
That's brilliant. So can everybody see that poll? And if you won't mind voting, you can vote more than once for whichever of those ideas you're most interested in. And if you can let me know, Izzy, when you're about to close the poll, you should be able to see people voting.
Is it just one, Emma?
You can actually put more than one if you want, if there's a few that stand out.
So while you're voting, I think I might take a moment just to talk a bit about why we do these 12 ideas and how you can use them. So we know that we've got lots of cooperative councillors and candidates who are really keen to put some of your co-op values into practice, but need a bit of help with how to do that. And sometimes that might be help coming up with the ideas. Sometimes it's a bit of a hand having some of that sort of evidence and detail to help you persuade your colleagues when you're negotiating over what makes the cut to manifestos. And sometimes if you're a sitting councillor, you need some of that information to be able to get officers to help make something happen. So what we thought we'd do is put together some ideas. They're not a platform. We aren't trying to create a centralized policy platform for our councillors. We very much believe that you guys are best placed to come up with the policies that are going to suit your own neighbourhoods best. But we wanted to furnish you with the tools and ideas to be great cooperators when you're elected. So we've put together these 12 ideas, and you are able to pick and choose ones which feel relevant in your area. For each of those, we've put some suggestions for actions you can take, and we've tried to compile some of the resources that we've got on our website, whether it's blogs and case studies, campaigns, briefings, some of our Cooperation Live videos that we recorded over the summer from lockdown, these Wednesday evening Zoom calls and sessions from conference on relevant topics, so that you're able to watch those back. And the idea is that you can pick and choose out of the ideas that resonate locally, make them yours, take ownership, look at how you can use the cooperative party's resources to make them relevant in your area, and really champion why you're a co-op councillor and why you're a co-op candidate. So we've got a bit of an update on last year. You'll see that if anyone eagle-eyed among you has spotted that modern slavery's come out, not because we don't find it important, but because actually we've had a massive campaign win on modern slavery since the last time we published our 12 ideas, which means that all councils, once that law gets put into practice, are going to need to do the points that we cover in our charter. So we've updated and made sure it's relevant and has things that we hope are going to be meaningful to your local authorities. I don't know, Emma, if it's worth talking a bit about sort of some of the next steps and some of the work you'll be doing in the new year with groups of councillors to sort of adapt some of these to be relevant locally.
Absolutely. So as part of our support to you as candidates and councillors, we've put together these 12 ideas. I've put the link in the chat so you can go and browse and look through them as well at your leisure. But we also want to help you bring those alive and take them into your groups, your local campaign forums, your district parties as well. So we do have that offer that we, a member of the staff, will come and talk to your group. We can talk about some of the co-op ideas, but also how you stand as a co-op councillor as well, making sure your colleagues are aware of all those opportunities. But yeah, the offer stands, more than willing to come to groups. I know I've got a few booked for January already, and I'm really looking forward to that. So you don't just have to do it by yourself. We can help you and support you and talk about these ideas as well. And the great thing about these 12 ideas, and you'll see from all the resources there, that they've all been done somewhere else. There's always somewhere that we can point to where it has worked. And these are tried and tested ideas, and that always helps to make the argument with your colleagues. So, do you want me to go back to the poll? Should we have a look at what
I want to see which ones people have picked.
Okay, so the top two, well, the top one is rebuilding a fairer economy, and the second one is food justice. So shall I pick up food justice, and do you want to pick up rebuilding the fair economy, Anna? Does that sound like a good way forward? And we'll just talk through those key ideas that have got the most interest. If you have got any questions or comments, stick them into the chat and we will pick those up as well. So food justice, obviously the idea is to put food justice at the top of the agenda, and it's why it's at the top of our list. It absolutely has been a key issue through the pandemic. There's been huge questions about inequalities and access to good, healthy food. And unfortunately, we've seen a huge rise in food banks, but a lot of our members, a lot of candidates and councillors are involved in those and working on the ground on these kind of issues. We've put together a little guide, particularly for councillors, called Beyond Food Banks, Campaigning on Food Justice. And we look at areas all over the country that have campaigned on food justice, but also demonstrate what they've achieved as well. And that includes, you know, the boroughs in London, to Labour groups in control, to councillors in opposition as well in rural settings. I think there's a really nice, if you look at that booklet, some really nice examples from all different parts of the country. One thing we're looking for in terms of your pledges is to have a lead member for food justice, to have that champion locally who can pick up this issue. We're also asking that you set up a local food partnership as well, because we know these building blocks are absolutely key in making a difference locally. Yes, as part of the Co-op movement, we are campaigning alongside Marcus Rashford on his End Child Food Poverty, and it's great. There's been huge developments there, and you may have seen just today the Co-op group have agreed in their stores to uplift the Healthy Start vouchers, which was one of his pledges. Yes, we can campaign and support that nationally, but actually we can make a difference locally as well. And we know by having those food partnerships and that champion for food justice, we've seen really innovative things locally, from community pantries to membership clubs, all aimed at trying to alleviate some of those issues that we're seeing on the ground during the pandemic. So yes, it's top of our agenda. There's some great ideas there. We ask for those couple of things if you haven't got them locally. You can check how your area is doing. We have something called the Food Justice Finder, so you can find out how your council's doing already. But also, if you go to that webpage, there's loads of great resources and our booklet as well, which would help you whether you're in power or opposition for ideas on what you can do. With that, can I hand over to you, Anna, to talk about the rebuilding the economy section?
Absolutely. Let me swap over. So I am, quick disclaimer, I'm not going to be able to help you avoid a recession in your patch. With the whole country is in a really difficult place, both in terms of our public health, but also in terms of our economy. And we've seen the worst sort of economic outcomes of COVID of anywhere in the developed world. Well, I'm not sure about the States, actually, in Europe for sure. And, you know, so I'm not promising a silver bullet here, sadly. I think we are all going to feel some of those effects, but what we can do is seek to take those steps to protect jobs, to support local businesses and local cooperatives, and as we rebuild and regrow and emerge from this crisis, think about what kind of economy we want next and how we can shape that to be fairer, so that, God forbid, another crisis comes down the road in 10, 20 years' time, we are in a position where our economy is much more resilient, less vulnerable to shock, and where we're able to avoid such a deep crash. So with that disclaimer in place, there are lots of things you can do at a local level that will make a difference to your residents and your communities, and will create something that is much fairer. Some of this thinking is based around our community wealth building work. Lots of you, I think, will be familiar with. It's the first thing I wrote on joining the Co-op Party staff team, and I'm sure I've met lots of you in meetings and we've talked about some of these ideas, but it's very much around how you as a council can use your influence and the power of the public purse to be able to reshape what your local economy looks like. So rather than pouring public money into big outsourcing companies, maybe companies based overseas or in a different region of the UK, where they might employ locally but on sort of low wage jobs where people have very little say, how can we repurpose the way that procurement works so that you spend it in a way which generates local wealth and keeps it in your economy? So looking at that multiplier effect of money spent locally being spent locally again and again and again and having more impact, but also looking at the jobs picture and how we turn someone, you know, say a security guard working for Serco, managing security on council properties. At the moment, they're probably very low waged. They, even if you've got sort of living wage in your contract, they don't have any say about their work. They certainly don't get a share in the success of the organisation. Then sort of, obviously we are big supporters of bringing things in-house, but if things have to be done externally, then looking at how there are cooperative and local alternatives so that that security guard has a vote in the way that his company is run, or her, and gets to share in any profits made. And it's not just about the council's own spending power, it's about your influence as a council with all the private and public anchor institutions in your area and getting them to rethink the way that they spend money. So there's been lots of you will be familiar with Preston, but there are lots of examples of councils doing something similar. Manchester, I know, have done a big work around mapping how their spend leaks out of the Greater Manchester area. Sunderland Council passed a motion setting out a commitment to some of this work. I know that Plymouth have done a very ambitious piece of work around doubling the cooperative sector, because it's not enough just to spend locally, it's about creating and shaping a different kind of economy where we've got a bigger cooperative sector. So really concrete stuff in Plymouth there around how they're going to grow their co-op sector, and that's through advice, through startup loans, through identifying sectors which are perfect, ripe for expansion, and really supporting those ones to grow. So and I've seen in the chat we've got a bit of a discussion around this. Cornwall doing it, very nice, good example, and I would love to hear more about that. Our colleague is a big fan of Cornwall, so any Cornish facts, send them our way. We hear a lot about the St Ives Fishing Co-op. This is, I guess, it's an idea we're looking at how we can develop at a national level, and we've worked a lot with Annalise Dodds this year with our Owning the Future publication. But Labour's in power across huge swathes of the country, and we don't need to wait for Whitehall to be able to start shaping and creating that economy that we want. And so your role as local councillors and as campaigners and candidates is to really help articulate that vision, bring it to life to residents, and help to use the levers available to you in local government to make it happen at a local level. That's probably my economic spiel, Emma. We can see if there are questions, or we can do another.
No, there's a few questions, but what you're saying, it does ring bells. My own council started that journey. I'm a councillor in Rotherham, and we employ Claire's to do some work with us around our local economy. And I've got a fantastic social value policy in place now, focusing on things like local jobs and local procurement, and really helping support our economy here as well. They are small steps, but they're really important steps, and really good as well. So we've got a question from Gary, who has circulated the 12 ideas already, which is brilliant. And to help you circulate, there is a PDF version there as well. So you can just pop that onto an email to all your colleagues and get them discussing that. He also asks whether there is a version for PCCs as well. You'll be pleased to know, yes, there is, which is great. And we have 5 ideas for police and crime commissioners. Again, I'll put the link into the chat. If you go onto that page and scroll down, you'll see that is available to download there as well. And actually, within both the 12 ideas and the 5 ideas for the police and crime commissioners is campaigning against retail crime, violence against shop workers. You'll have seen that the Co-op movement has been campaigning a lot on this. The Usdaw petition in particular that was supported hit 100,000 last week, so will be debated in Parliament to try and get stronger measures for those shop workers that faced violence. And it's a really good campaign to work on jointly with your police and crime commissioner. I know police and crime commissioner we've supported. She's doing visits to co-op stores to talk to staff about this issue as part of her sort of survey, looking at that area and looking at what she could do as a police and crime commissioner. So I think it's a really good idea. There's some comments coming in, and I think Martin's might lead us on to the next 2 issues that came up, the next 2 ideas that were next on the list. And I'll let you pick which one you fancy. Community and not-for-profit transport or cooperative housing. What do you...
2 favourite topics. There was one question in the chat from Maureen about co-op area champions and food justice. Yes. I don't know if it's one that you wanted to touch on before we move on to a different topic.
Yep, absolutely. Within that guide that Beyond Food Banks, there is a section on working with the co-op movement, and absolutely your co-op area champions, your member pioneers can work with you on the issue of food justice. Various co-op stores have schemes available. You can link your food banks to them or work with them on some of the issues as well. So absolutely, we would encourage councillors and candidates to make touch with their champions, and we've put those examples in that guide as well. I think it's a really good area where as a movement we can work together.
Great. Lovely. So I think
Megan's Swift has just got a question about mayors take over the police. It depends on your area. So in some areas like Manchester, the mayor is also the police and crime commissioner. In some other areas, like where I am in South Yorkshire, they are still separate. It depends on which bit of the country. So some still have separate police and crime commissioners, but places like London and Manchester don't, just in case that helps. It depends where you are in the country.
It's an example of pick and mix Devo deals from the Tories, where some people get some stuff and others get a different setup. So I will I think I might talk about housing, if that's okay, partly because I really like it that Adam's had a shout out about the work that he's been doing in his housing portfolio in Colchester, leaving in social value. And that is definitely one way you can do it. You're spending lots of money, hopefully building homes, and there's a community wealth building role there. But there's also work we can do to improve our community-led housing sector. And there are lots of different things that councils can do, from being directly involved in helping community land trusts and community groups identify sites and building new community-owned and community-led housing, through to making it easier for those community groups to work with the council. Having worked with a number of community housing groups, I can tell you, even though I'm a councillor myself and would love to say that everything's perfect, it's really hard working with a council when you're doing something that touches lots of different departments. The land's owned by one person and the permission sits somewhere else. So making it easier for community land trust groups who want to build homes to get set up by making land available, or including community-led housing as one of the conditions for big redevelopments. And I think that's happened in East London, for example. There have been examples where it might be a private development, but as part of their either Section 106 or infrastructure levy funding, they're being required to also support the development of a community land trust. You can help community groups speak with other partners. Other organisations often own a lot of land in London. It's Transport for London and transport authorities, and I'd imagine there's some of that elsewhere, railway companies, or the church owns a lot of land. So there's sort of lots of places, public land from other parts of the public sector, like NHS land disposal. So helping organisations navigate all of the vagaries of public sector land ownership can be a massive help. There are also ways in which you can make the housing you already manage more community focused, making sure that your tenants have a voice in the way that housing services are run, creating democratic bodies whereby people can take over management of services on their estate that they're passionate about, and sort of create that much more local, much more bottom-up way to look after spaces. And there are some really great examples of places that are developing community-led housing. I can remember this time last year, perhaps we were talking with councillors in Stroud about how they were looking at community-led housing as a solution for sort of semi-rural areas, for example, right through to places like Lewisham, which were looking at developing it in very urban areas. So yeah, lots of options there, and a real variety of ways in which you can make that happen. The only other one that I should have mentioned when sort of helping community organisations navigate some of those public public services that are very opaque from the outside is the planning system. And I know that a lot of boroughs, so places like Southwark, for example, have made a rule that all developers' viability assessments have to be made public in order to help community organisations challenge the amount of affordable housing, and also help them to have a fact under their belt when they go in to ask for community-led housing to form part of a scheme. So that's something you could look at implementing in your new planning policy as well. And you've got buses, Emma, and all other forms of transport, of course.
Where do I start with buses? They're in a complete mess, to be honest. They've really been hit actually by the pandemic in terms of their use, and I know that varies across the country, but we know they are a lifeline for lots of places, especially rural places, and they really have been tested to their limits, really. And I think there is a conversation happening about their future and what happens. In terms of this pledge, this is about making sure there is a space in terms of bus operators for that community transport and not-for-profit bus companies. It doesn't just have to be your big players, your dare I say it, firsts and stagecoaches and the monopolies. It's making sure in terms of your local transport system that you are doing what you can to encourage community bus operators to come forward as well. So it could be around reviewing your procurement strategies, and actually in particular at the moment there is support going in for public transport. Is that being focused at the right providers? Is it going down to the not-for-profit providers as well? Are they getting a fair share of that as well to ensure their survival? You can look at terms of how your bus services are sort of put together, and whether there are those opportunities for the smaller providers to bid for those as well. Some councillors have gone as far as in setting up their own bus companies, which is possible. It's quite ambitious, but it is possible as well, and we share some lovely stories on the resource page about that. But it's really about there's plenty of campaigning to be done about buses, and there really is an opportunity to promote that not-for-profit providers that do look more about how they serve the community, rather than just trying to get the profits really and running those profitable routes. And actually some of them are really quite innovative, sort of the dial-a rides and things that we've got locally are really good at engaging people who wouldn't normally be able to use public transport as well. Is there anything to add, Anna, on transport?
There were two things that occurred. One was around, obviously we care a lot about bus routes and commercial bus routes, but just to, when we're talking about community transport, remember all of that other transport that affects your residents. Emma mentioned dial-a-ride, but a lot of community transport is dial-a-ride. You've got community transport groups offering your SEND and services for schools. So you can have a think about ways in which you can create community transport to meet the needs of specific groups of residents, as well as providing routes which the for-profit bus providers perhaps are pulling out of. And I guess the other part of that is, imagine you've got a council-owned SEND transport, and it takes kids to and from a school. Well, that's at 9 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, and that bus is obsolete between 9:30 and 2:30, which might be the time when a particularly isolated estate with a lot of older residents would really value better transport links to the local supermarket. So there's sort of lots of creative ways you can think about improving bus services that don't require you to just start from scratch. You could start to think cleverly about how you use resources that the council perhaps already engages with. And then the second thing was a hard question from Martin around HCT. It's actually addressed to you, Emma, but we can chat about how we do that. HCT, we've done work with Hackney Community Transport, and I know that they're very passionate about creating much more responsive bus services that meet local need in a way that commercial providers just don't, based on need for routes rather than need for profit. They did some really interesting collaborative work, I think, in Jersey around how bus services are commissioned. So I'm not sure, Martin, if you wanted sort of advice on whether to go with them or how you might go about building the framework to be able to use a carrier like HCT, but I certainly recommend a conversation with them for anyone who loves a chat about buses, as they're hugely knowledgeable and have really demonstrated that community transport can be done at scale, not just sort of a bus route there and a minibus here.
Absolutely. And also there's one around example of a local council who set up their own bus company. They can't actually do that at the moment. So there are some councils that already have their own bus companies, but in terms of setting up a new one, that is more challenging with the legislation at the moment for local councils, which is a real shame. And why we focus on that sort of community not-for-profit transport and trying to support that. We're up to our half hour, so we're going to love you and leave you. I just noticed Gillian's note just about the solidarity with the farmer protests. Just so you know, our chair of the parliamentary party, Preet Gill, has been very vocal on this and has written I think to the Foreign Secretary here regarding that. If you look up her Twitter, you'll be able to see that she has issued a letter with regards to that issue, and she is chair of the Parliamentary Co-operative Party. You'll be pleased to hear. So yes, thank you very much for raising that important issue. So thank you very much for joining us. That was a quick whiz round some of those ideas. I hope it's given you plenty of food for thought over your Christmas lunch to think about what you can take forward in your manifesto process in the new year. And that offer stands from us if you want to come to talk to your group or your councillors or candidates to maybe talk about some of these in a bit more detail, then absolutely that is something that we can do. So with that, thank you very much, Anna, for your brains today on this. I really appreciated it. And thank you very much for all of you for joining us. Have a lovely Christmas, whatever you do. Do try and get a bit of time off and enjoy yourselves. And we'll see you in the new year. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Happy Christmas to everyone.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Bye-bye.
Merry Christmas.
See you guys in the new year. Bye.
Merry Christmas.
Bye. Have a good
Bye-bye.
holiday. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.